And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. Finally. I mean, it has been a really busy week here at Cowboy State Politics Studios. I've had a lot of really great interviews. Some of them are still scheduled. Hey, do you remember on the podcast where I told you that all the Democrats are still as crazy as you think they are here, even though they live in Wyoming? Well, the truth is, tomorrow I'm going to interview the guy that I talked about during the episode, Mr. Gabriel Green, the guy that said he infiltrated a Freedom Caucus event, and the truth is, he actually did infiltrate. And infiltrate is such a strong word. Rather, he was invited into a Freedom Caucus meeting, and he had some pretty interesting stuff to say about conservatives. In fact, he said he loathes them. Pretty strong language, if you ask me. Well, anyway, I'm going to interview him tomorrow, and we're going to have a frank discussion on the program. Find out exactly why it is that he doesn't like conservatives and why he thinks that Democrats actually have a plan. So there's, I had a really great discussion with Fred Deshefsky. He's the owner of US Coin Capital, as one of the sponsors of Cowboy State Politics. But I wanted to get his thoughts on whether or not there's any gold in Fort Knox. And so we talked about that, the deficit, how the Federal Reserve came to be, what some of the problems with it and how that thing has evolved. And it's a great interview. It lasts about an hour. And so I've got that one in the hopper too. So there's a lot of really great stuff that's been coming on Cowboy State Politics. But today it's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. If you want to be part of the program, if you've got something on your mind, something that you just have to say, have to talk about, well, today's your day. It's Open Line Friday on the program, and this is the day of the week where we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about, if there's anybody that wants to call in. And it's very different than other times during the week, usually at other points. Well, you kind of have to talk about what I want to talk about. Not so on Friday. On Friday, the entire show is left up to you, should you want to call in. So we'll do that today, and I've got a whole bunch of really interesting stuff in the stack of stuff, and so we'll go there. But first, I want to begin, and, political figures come and go, and it's some of them we miss. Some of them we are feeling unburdened by what has been. But recently, Tim Walz said the Democrats didn't win because they're not woke enough, if you can believe it. Here's what he said. Take a listen to this.
that our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DEI, and we let them define what woke is. We got ourselves in this mess because we weren't bold enough to stand up and say, you damn right we're proud of these policies. We're going to put them in, and we're going to execute them. And
wow. Yay!
That our strength
Whoa,
is our...
We weren't woke enough, if you can believe it. Now, I mean, that's the message that the Democrats got from the last election, that they weren't crazy enough, that they didn't participate enough in picking winners and losers. They weren't racist enough against white people. I mean, it's absolutely insane that they weren't more in support of the LGBTQ ZXPWS agenda. That they just didn't do enough of that, and that's why people voted against them. It couldn't be that American citizens are absolutely sick of this woke culture. It couldn't be that we're sick of people, getting jobs based on their immutable characteristics instead of how good they are at their jobs, what they bring to the table. No. According to Tim Walz, we have to do everything based on those characteristics that really have absolutely nothing to do with your performance and that you had absolutely nothing to do with. It just shows you how out of touch the Democrat Party and most liberals are. That they have no idea why it is that American citizens voted against them, and instead they just say, well, we weren't woke enough, we didn't double down enough, we didn't push our open borders policies enough. Absolutely amazing, my friends. And every once in a while, I started with that soundbite, so I figured why not go with some of the ones that we did. So occasionally, and you've heard me talk about this before, that I'll go back in the audio sound banks and find sound bites that were from a year ago. Here's a good one from old Joy Reid. Listen to this.
Brandon Scott. I cannot believe I have to say this. Brandon Scott was elected with 70% of the vote in 2020 in a city that is 61%
Joy
black.
Reid.
So by right-wing logic, a diversity hire would have been a white man. Which, of course, is what they want. Only the white Christian men may have the things. And at this point, it's evident what they mean by DEI, right? Okay, it means black people. It's the reason the right complained about critical race theory. It's not fashionable to be openly racist anymore in America, unlike what they call the good old days. So referring to a black mayor as a DEI mayor gets the point across, right? So fellas, why not just say what you mean? You can't stand black people. We get it. You've been heard.
Wow. So the GOP, and this is Joy Reid, and remember, this is from February 27th or March 27th of last year, that the GOP hates white people. And Tim Walz has to ask the question, why did we lose? Well, we lost because we weren't woke enough. We didn't have enough stuff like that from Joy Reid. We didn't have enough of Jen Psaki. Here's another soundbite from a year ago. Listen to this.
And of course, I could go on and on and on. He flat out refused to condemn the political violence at a white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, saying there were very fine people on both sides.
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis.
All right, so point being is that Tim Walz and the rest of the Democrats think that they didn't win the election because they didn't lean into critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusion enough. Well, there's a reason why they lost, and they're going to continue to lose again. I mean, absolutely incredible. Also, a really fun soundbite. Well, you know what? I'm going to save that one for later on in the program. Let's get to the stack of stuff. From the Daily Caller, the Trump administration is revoking billions of dollars in COVID spending. And if you look at the front page of the Cowboy right now, maybe a story or two down there, but front page of the Cowboy yesterday was that Wyoming is going to lose $40 million in COVID funding. Well, $40 billion, not million, $40 billion, and all of it goes to the public health department. But from the Daily Caller, here's why the Trump administration is revoking all of that spending in COVID money. And I quote, 5 years after the COVID-19 stay-at-home orders, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will pull back billions in pandemic spending from state and local public health departments, nonprofits, and international partners, the Department of Health and Human Services said on Tuesday. HHS confirmed to the Daily Caller News Foundation that as much as $11 billion could be cut in grants and cooperative agreements identified by the CDC as no longer necessary. The pandemic has been over, and if you even believe that it was a pandemic, and I mean, absolutely, the COVID virus was real. The question is, what is it set up to be, as bad as it turned out to be? I personally think that absolutely it was a leak from that lab over in Wuhan. And to that extent, yeah, this thing was pretty well orchestrated, as well as all of the stay-at-home orders, all of the mask mandates, and everything that followed, which, by the way, what Governor Gordon absolutely bought into. But the HHS confirmed to the Daily Caller News Foundation that as much as $11 billion could be cut. The COVID-19 pandemic is over, I'm quoting now, and HHS will no longer waste billions of taxpayer dollars responding to a non-existent pandemic that Americans moved on from years ago. The Biden administration ended the COVID-19 public health emergency on May 11th, at which time it folded some emergency COVID-19 programs into its existing structure. Grantees began receiving notices on Monday and have 30 days to reconcile their expenditures, according to the NBC News report. I talked about this yesterday on the program, and here's the problem with it. During COVID, there was so much money that was floating around in the CARES Act and the recovery plan and every other funding measure that Democrats could get their hands on. There was so much money floating around that states used it to just expand government. That's what happened here in Wyoming. I was sitting in the gallery in the House when all of the CARES money was being divvied up. And I'm telling you, my friends, it was like hogs at a trough. They spent money on just about everything that you could possibly think of. Well, when the pandemic stopped, or was, when public officials finally admitted that the pandemic was over, they had already created all of these government programs. And so the COVID money kept flowing, and, until just recently, the spigot was still turned on. So what government did is they folded those programs that were created out of COVID and all the CARES Act money into existing programs, and they just bolstered the size of them. So and this is just kind of a general rule, if there's a bloat in federal funding or a bloat in money, government is going to grow at the same rate. And that's exactly what happened. One of the reasons why, and I've got a piece here from Nate Martin, I'll tell you all about him in just a second. One of the reasons why the folks at the Wyoming Department of Health are freaking out is because they hired a whole bunch of people. They expanded government. They increased the scope of their program. Well, now they have to get rid of them, and it's all their fault. Well, now it's a big controversy that we're cutting jobs. Quite frankly, my friends, those jobs should not have been created in the first place. There was no need to dramatically expand the Wyoming Department of Health or the CDC or the NIH or any of those. It was a perfect example, or a perfect opportunity, rather, for government to expand. It's just like Rahm Emanuel said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So there's the broad strokes of of DOGE canceling all of this COVID relief money. Here's how it hits at home. Now, I've talked about this guy before on the program. His name is Nate Martin. He runs this outfit called Better Wyoming. Isn't it funny how all these organizations have flowery names attached to them? They sound great. They're for the benefit of Wyoming. So why not? Why wouldn't they be a good organization? Well, Better Wyoming used to be called Ella Wyoming, which was a creation of Liz Storr. Ella Wyoming was an organization that sole purpose was to attack any conservative on any political point they could possibly think of. They were a political hit piece creation outfit. I mean, I don't know how best to describe, but that's what they did. They would write ridiculous pieces on the internet and submit them to newspapers. And this Nate Martin guy is absolutely right in the middle of it. Well, he's got a piece out, and I think it was in the Turkey Vulture, or could be the Pravda on the Platte, but it's entitled, Hageman is Lying About Her Vote to Cut Medicaid. Now, this circular logic is pretty crazy, so you're going to have to follow me here. And I quote, Last month, Congress passed a budget plan that will require deep cuts to the Medicaid health insurance program and a decrease in the Americans' ability to access health care. First of all, Medicaid does not cover all Americans. Medicaid is a program that is set up through the state to cover disadvantaged people, people of lower incomes. So it isn't even a question of a federal program. It's a state program. It's funded through the state of Wyoming, and it was bolstered by those Medicaid dollars during COVID-19 that I just told you about, the $40 million that's being cut. He says, Representative Hageman voted for the budget plan, which is designed to cut federal programs in order to offset the cost of individual and corporate tax cuts. So their logic is dizzying here, but basically he's saying that because we're not taxing rich people enough, we're going to hurt those people under Medicaid. And that's why we passed the federal budget. All right, so if we're following him, just passing the federal budget because there was a reduction in Medicaid spending because it was all COVID-19 spending, well, that means that Harriet Hageman hates Medicaid and everybody that's on it. Absolutely incredible. Now, there's more crazy stuff in this piece, and I'll get to it in just a second. But I'm already past the break, so let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, I'll finish up this discussion about Nate Martin, and I'll tell you the rest of the stuff that I know about him. Fascinating guy. Not all that smart, though. He is most definitely, though, a political operative. So I'll tell you about him in just a second. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia.
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland. France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel
Cowboy State Politics is only going to continue to expand. This program can be heard on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. Pretty much everywhere. It's Cowboy State Politics. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. If there's something on your mind, give me a call and we'll talk about it. Before the break, we were talking about an article, a piece, I don't even know what to call it, opinion, hit piece, whatever, written by Nate Martin. And he's saying that because Representative Hageman voted for a budget deal that has reductions to Medicaid in it, that means she hates Medicaid and she wants to cut it. Now, and here's some more of the dizzying logic. And in a minute, I'm going to tell you why there are cuts to Medicaid. And I quote, "If you squint real hard and ignore reality," quoting again, Representative Hageman's claim almost passes muster. "The budget plan she voted for does not contain specific details about how or how much cut Medicaid, how much, it's... his grammar is terrible. Specific details about how or how much to cut Medicaid for seniors, children, and disabled people, or other Wyomingites who depend on it for health coverage. What the budget plan that Representative Hageman helped advance absolutely does do, though, however, is restrict the amount of money available to the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. This is the congressional committee that assigns funding for Medicaid and Medicare." All right, so obviously if she voted for a budget plan that has a provision to decrease the amount of money going to Medicaid, she hates seniors, she hates sick people, and she really hates poor children. I mean, that's the message that Nate Martin is sending you. So now, who exactly is Nate Martin? I already told you that he's the founder of Elo Wyoming, that he's absolutely in the tank with Liz Storr. Liz Storr is one of the people that gave him the money for Elo Wyoming and continues to fund Better Wyoming right now. Liz Storr is a representative from Teton County. She's what I refer to as Wyoming's version of George Soros. There are a ton of political organizations that she's founded that absolutely work for, the whole reason for their existence is to push the Democrat agenda. There's a whole bunch of them that are LGBTQ centered. There's Nate Martin's group, Better Wyoming, that allegedly focuses on health care. But really what she closes them, and this is the fascinating part about all these organizations, including Nate Martin's Better Wyoming, is they're all shrouded with really, really fun-sounding names. And Liz Storr likes conservation groups like Muley Fanatics, Trout Unlimited. There's a whole long list of them. She is a major funder of Wildfile, and the High Country News. So there's a whole bunch of entities that she's involved with, and really what they are is cover for all of her political activities. And if you dig deep enough, a lot of these really liberal organizations will, and if you look into the funding, you'll find funding from what is called the George B. Storr Foundation. And Liz Storr is the head of that. So lots of crazy stuff going on there with Nate Martin. He is also married to radical Democrat Carly Provenza. Carly Provenza is a Democrat representative from Laramie. And if you watch any of her stuff on the House floor, wow, talk about somebody who is so far out there on the left wing that it is hard to talk any sense with. Though, I have to say, I have had a couple of conversations with Carly Provenza that are, I think beneficial. We talked about this corner crossing deal. That's one of her big things, and a couple of other items. So she's against the Convention of States, for example. So we talked about that, too. So, I mean, even though she's a radical Democrat, she's not so bad. But she's married to Nate Martin. Those two are also the folks that there was a big kerfuffle, remember, recently, well, maybe not recently, a couple of years ago, where Nate Martin and Carly Provenza were infiltrated by somebody who used to work for James O'Keefe. Not by James O'Keefe himself, but people who used to work for them. And the whole idea was to find out about their Democrat activities, and it didn't really work that well. So now let me tell you why there are cuts to Medicaid. And, I love, by the way, If you've noticed, if you're watching on the live program, you'll see I've got my stack of stuff back. I'd lost it all. So here's the reason why there's cuts to Medicaid. From the Wall Street Journal this morning, taxpayers spent billions covering the same Medicaid patients twice. Now, yeah, you heard that right. Paying for the same Medicaid services twice. And I quote, health insurers got double paid by the Medicaid system for the coverage of hundreds of thousands of patients across the country, costing taxpayers billions of dollars in extra payments. The insurers, which are paid by state and federal governments to cover low-income Medicaid recipients, collected at least $4.3 billion over 3 years for patients who were enrolled and paid for from other states. So one of the biggest reasons why there's cuts to Medicaid is we've already paid for it. In fact, we've paid for it twice. Just another example of the waste, fraud, and abuse that is coming from, that DOJ is uncovering. And actually, in the Oval Office yesterday, one of the reporters was wearing a mask. I mean, we're talking about COVID, so we may as well talk about masks. Well, President Trump confronted them. Here's what he had to say. Listen to this. It's funny.
I haven't seen a mask in so long. You're wearing a mask. So nice of you. I haven't seen anybody wearing a mask in a long time. It's good. You feel more comfortable, right? Good. That's good.
Let's listen to it one more time.
I haven't seen a mask in so long. You're wearing a mask. So nice of you. I haven't seen anybody wearing a mask in a long time. It's good. You feel more comfortable, right? Good. That's good.
I have the same feeling every time I'm wandering around and I see somebody wearing a mask. And I get it. Wear what you want to, but let's not pretend that it's protecting you from anything. When the pandemic got started and Governor Gordon issued his mask mandate, I was sitting over at my parents' house because there was, there's really very little, there wasn't anything to do. None of the stores were open. You couldn't go anywhere. So we just hang out as a family. Well, my dad and I got bored and we figured out how big the hole is. The hole, but I would say all the holes in any masks are. And we picked 5 of them and all the way up to an N95 mask. And you can, if you do enough research, you can find how tightly woven those things are and how porous they are. Well, we figured out the size of all the openings on them. And then we went and looked at exactly how big one little COVID virus is. And what we found out is that the COVID virus is exponentially smaller than the smallest opening on even those N95 masks. So, to put it in perspective, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I do remember the analogy we came up with is throwing a marble at a chain link fence. That's how effective it was. Every once in a while, the fence is going to repel the marble back. You'll hit it just right. But for the most part, pretty porous, not going to stop anything. And none of those masks stopped the COVID virus anyway. So if you think about, here we are at the very least 3 years removed from the pandemic, probably 4. In my opinion, the pandemic was over about 6 months in. And really in Wyoming, I really didn't see too much happening here anyway. But even from that point on till today, so 4 years later, there are still people wearing masks. And I really think that it is it turned into a kind of a psychological condition that wearing a mask made you feel more comfortable. And that's what President Trump said to that reporter. So, I don't know, absolutely ridiculous, but still to this day, every once in a while, even in Sheridan, Wyoming, wandering around, I see people wearing masks, which is absolutely ridiculous. Moving on. Yesterday, actually all this week, I've been talking about some of the judges that are really creating havoc with the Trump agenda. And just to put this in perspective, we're not talking about federal appeals court judges. Everything you're seeing on the news, these are all district level judges. And so they don't even have jurisdiction over the entire United States. It's just their district. So it's just, 3 or 4 states. Or, in larger, higher, more populated areas, it's a smaller geographic area, but, relatively the same amount of people. So, it used to be when one of those judges would pass a ruling or issue an injunction, It would just cover that district. It didn't cover the entire United States. Well, these district judges a lot of them have been engaging in what is basically a judicial power grab. They're just saying, well, I'm going to issue an injunction nationwide. And there's no really authority that gives them that ability. I mean, there's nothing written down. They don't have the authority. A judge in Wyoming doesn't have the authority over the entire United States. But that's what's happening. So from the Federalist, meet the Democrat donor judge hamstringing Trump's military trans policy. This is one of the first things that Trump enacted, a ban on so-called transgender people serving in the military. And I quote, his name is O'Hearn. O'Hearn's judicial activism hardly makes her, it's a she, hardly makes her an anomaly among rogue judges on board with greenlighting leftist lawfare against Trump. It's another day that ends in Y, which means another Democrat-appointed federal judge is attempting to unilaterally kneecap President Donald Trump's administration. On Monday, Christine O'Hearn, a New Jersey-based district judge, issued a 14-day temporary restraining order preventing Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, and the U.S. Air Force from initiating involuntary separation proceedings from two branch members who proclaimed to be transgender. The lawsuit from the service members came in response to a January 27th executive order, 7 days into his presidency, by Trump and subsequent Pentagon directives to effectively develop the process of removing trans-identifying troops from the armed forces. In granting the request for the restraining order, O'Hearn, a Biden appointee, opined that the plaintiffs, quote, demonstrated a likelihood of success on the merits of their claims that the orders, at a minimum, violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Fifth Amendment. Equally notable, however, is her complaint that the executive branch, which is constitutionally authorized to dictate U.S. military policy, did not provide her, a lower court judge, any compelling justification whatsoever for why it's implementing the president's directives regarding trans-identifying troops in the service, except, of course, that the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and presumably he can fire or hire anybody that he wants. He is the supreme commander of the American military. And apparently the judge didn't really go to civics class. But let me tell you about this judge. You'll love her. The U.S. Senate confirmed O'Hearn in a 53-44 vote in 2021. It was Susan Collins of Maine, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska that voted with the Democrats to support her nomination. O'Hearn is the second federal district judge to stymie the president's trans policy. Let's see here. But she is a major Democrat donor. Think about now. Listen to this. Let's see here. Here we go. The FEC Commission records show that O'Hearn gave $6,900 to the 2008 campaign of then Representative Rob Andrews, who was defeated in that year's Democratic Senate primary. They also reveal that O'Hearn collectively gave $5,000 to the campaign of now former Senator and disgraced criminal Bob Menendez in 2011. Menendez was sentenced to 11 years in prison for basically corruption. But it gets worse. O'Hearn isn't the only individual to work for. She worked for Brown and Connery, who's shelled out money for Democrat politicos. According to Open Secrets, virtually all political donations from the law firm's employees have gone to Democrat candidates and causes in recent years. During the 2024 election, for example, 100% of Brown and Connery's employee donations to federal candidates went to Democrats, while 0% went to Republicans. So clearly, another judge who is at the very least conflicted about anything to do with any of these policies, but she's done a lot worse than that. Donated a lot of money to Democrats. Now, I don't know about you, but a $5,000 donation would be, that's a huge number in my world. But this judge, giving boatloads of cash to the Democrats. So, but I've got another one here, and and I told you yesterday that all of the foreign-born judges in D.C. have got their hands on all of these cases. And after the break, I'm going to tell you about another one, and this one you probably already heard of. His name is Boasberg. Yeah, what a great guy that is. telling them to turn the planes around, bring the criminals back. Yeah, we got to have criminals in the country. We'll talk about this idiot coming up.
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson on Open Line Friday. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. If there's something you want to talk about, let me know. Go ahead and give me a call. Yesterday, I was telling you how all of the D.C. judges that were born in foreign countries have their hands on one of these things that's coming out of the Trump administration. And this guy, Boasberg, he's the one that said you have to turn the planes around. We have to bring the criminals back. We don't care if they're illegal aliens and they've committed a whole bunch of crimes here. You have to bring them back. Well, now that judge, and I don't know how this happens because the way cases are supposed to be assigned is at random. That way, when a lawsuit is filed, lawyers really don't know which judge they're going to get, unless, of course, they're engaging in judge shopping. So, for example, the abortion lawsuit that was filed in Teton County, it was kicked back into Trona County. So in districts where there's more than one judge, you really don't know which one you're going to get. But interestingly enough, this Boasberg guy, now he's handling a lawsuit over the Signal chat leak, whatever it is. So not only is he dealing with the Trump administration on the deportations, but now it's over all of the chat message controversy thing from Fox News. And I quote, Fox News' Peter Doocy reports the latest on the signal messages between Trump officials. A new lawsuit targeting President Donald Trump's administration over leaked Pentagon plans in a signal chat has been assigned to U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, same guy that ordered a halt to the deportation efforts. The government watchdog group American Oversight filed the lawsuit on Wednesday, alleging that the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, and others violated federal records laws by discussing the Houthi attack plans in a signal group chat. The contest has now been randomly assigned to Boasberg. Randomly, in quotation marks. Quote, these judges have proven they care more about unlawfully kneecapping President Trump's agenda than accurately applying the facts to the law in each individual case. That was Darrell Issa of California. He echoed Hawley's statement on Fox, calling on Boasberg to recuse himself from the case. It goes on, quote, the biased Judge Boasberg has already demonstrated towards President Donald Trump and his administration is unmistakable. It is not a random act that Boasberg has the case, and I don't expect him to recuse himself. But that would be the best arrangement for the integrity of the court. Yeah, well, the problem is we're not dealing with people who really care that much about the integrity of the court. What they do care about is the Biden really liberal LGBTQ open borders agenda. That's what they care about, because if they didn't, well, then they wouldn't have multiple cases assigned to them. I mean, just another perfect example of the bias that exists in the federal court system. So did you see the interview with the NPR executive yesterday? Yeah, she was testifying in front of Congress, and they were kind of holding her accountable for some of the things that she said in the past. Now, this soundbite's a little bit long, but it is well worth a listen. You see, whatever you put online is there for forever, and it can be dug up by anybody who wants to look, unless you're really good at deleting stuff and you're really thorough. You can find most things, and it's very difficult to get rid of them. Such is the case with tweets. Now, we've seen some cases in the past where people have deleted their previous history, but that doesn't stop somebody from catching a screenshot and preserving it for posterity. Well, the executive from NPR, her name is Ms. Marr. She was being questioned in front of Congress. Listen to this. Absolutely amazing. A perfect example of why you and I and every other taxpayer doesn't need to be giving a dime to NPR, which, by the way, they're not a nonprofit organization anymore. But take a listen to this. It's a little bit long, but it's well worth the listen.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. How white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I've never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in
Yes,
January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt, yes, reparations, yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations.
No,
sir.
clearly
What kind
not.
of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we
Listen to him
all owe
laughing.
much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted. Okay, how much reparations have you personally paid?
Sir,
There you go.
I don't believe that I've ever paid reparations.
Okay, it's just for everybody else.
I'm not asking anyone
Seems
to pay
to be what you're
reparations, sir.
suggesting. Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
You believe it's morally wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being
You
illegal.
tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my time
You
at
tweeted
NPR.
that you read that book, but
I don't believe that I did read that.
I don't remember that. I don't believe that I did that. That's not what I mean. No. I didn't mean reparations monetarily. I absolutely ridiculous. It is so much fun confronting these folks on what they said and what they did. Oh, by the way, before I go anywhere, again, I want to remind you of what's coming up tomorrow, or actually it'll be Monday on the podcast, since I have a perfect opportunity here. I'm going to talk to this Gabriel Green guy, the one I played the audio from last Monday. Yeah, the one that loathes the Freedom Caucus and how he wants to help the Democrats. Yeah, I'm going to talk to him, and I'll play that interview for you probably on Monday, so don't forget about that. Let's see here. Well, let's go ahead and take our last break, and when we come back, let's see here. We'll go deeper into the stack of stuff. I've got some. Let's see here. Yeah, we'll continue talking about Generation Z. Why are they more conservative? I mean, it's a fascinating topic. That's why I've been going over it. You know, usually you think that young people are far more liberal, but that's not the case with Generation Z. They're the ones that went through COVID. They're the ones that we did a whole bunch of really bad stuff to. So it stands to reason why they are more conservative. And we'll talk about that when we come back. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number is 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call, and we'll talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. Back in a little bit. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia, Nova Scotia. I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland, France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be Gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only
Cowboy state politics is only going to continue to expand. My friends, I have some plans for you in the coming weeks. Still working on it, and I can't release too much right now, but I'm telling you, it's exciting. We're expanding the program. It's going to be fantastic. Well, of course it's going to be fantastic. I mean, it's Cowboy state politics, so why wouldn't it be a barrel of monkeys? So Generation Z, and this one fascinates me because I am very much the person that said, if you're not a liberal when you're 20, then you don't have a heart. And if you're not a conservative by the time you're 40, well, then it's pretty clear that you don't have a brain. I'm not saying that's a absolute rule all the time, because I know some really conservative young people, but for the most part, I mean, that's pretty much the case. Take a walk around the University of Wyoming campus. You'll find out what I mean. Well, a Fox Weekend headline declared that data shows, and it's one of those weird words, that Generation Z is the most conservative generation in decades. The real question is, why are we so shocked? Generation Z's lives have been entirely dominated by the lies and failure that the left and the Democrat Party have perpetrated. Following on the heels of the boomers, Generation X, and millennials, Generation Z is comprised of individuals born between 1997 and 2012. For such individuals, the ascendancy of the left and the Democrat Party has dominated their lives. According to a Gallup polling in 1997, the first year of Generation Z, 28% of Democrats described their views as liberal, as opposed to conservative or moderate. In 2023, 54% chose that description. Obama was elected in 2008 and served for 8 years of their lives. The Obama administration was the furthest left in American history, up until Joe Biden, right? Though Obama assiduously sought to hide it, until the Biden administration supplanted it. Those 12 years of Obama and Biden encompassed the majority of Generation Z's formative years. Outside of those 12 years, the left continued its ascendancy in American culture. Even when they didn't hold the White House, leftists operating from their enclaves in deep blue cities and states, the world of academia, entertainment, sports, media, and even business have steered Generation Z's society towards failure upon failure. And think about this. For the majority of the time that they've been alive, it has been one Democrat failure after another, one foreign policy embarrassment after another one. For the vast majority of their lives, they've not seen America be successful. They've not seen the economic powerhouse that is America. Not seen us with a strong military. Not seen us with a huge amount of influence over the world. It has been under the leadership of the Democrats, who have sought nothing more than to take America down a peg or two. Now, if you grow up in that environment, obviously, and if you have any brain cells with you at all, you're going to ask yourself, well, why is it that we're the most prosperous country, we're the most powerful country, and we do all this bad stuff, or we have all these failures across the globe? Well, when Donald Trump comes along, well, things change a little bit. Going on. The Generation Z simply has no memory of anything else other than the Democrat failures. From classrooms to the workplace, they've encountered a Berlin Wall of DEI initiatives. It's no wonder that, having been force-fed, they cynically say that DEI stands for didn't earn it. The Me Too movement also dominated a large portion of Gen Z's lifespan, portraying men as implicitly suspect and putting boys under the microscope. Except when the left and Democrats cynically forget what's convenient for them. Ergo, various allegations against Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, and Andrew Cuomo, who is now running for the Democrat nomination for the New York City mayor. Of course, COVID dominated Gen Z's lives and consciousness as it did no other generation. From start to finish, the left's response to COVID were an enormous manipulation, business closures, enforced isolation, and above all, school shutdowns. The result has been an astronomical loss of learning, declining public school attendance, and absenteeism. And all these effects fall fully on Generation Z, along with the global instability, open borders, crime, and homelessness fostered by leftist policies. In science class, their entire lives, they've heard Chicken Little climate change alarms that the sky is falling, or cooling, or warming, or just changing, with every conceivable meteorological problem attached to it. The experts have warned them that there will be some point of no return, a point in the future that stays forever dangling like a sword of Damocles, but never falling. In social thought, Gen Z has received the most leftist indoctrination in American history. Collectively, subjects of a groupthink worthy of Orwell, Generation Z has been injected with social justice, racial transgenderism, and critical race theory, and who knows what other doctrines from the left's policy petri dish. Not surprisingly, the result has been a Marxist malaise. And make no mistake about it, all of the things that I just mentioned, the DEI, the critical race theory, climate alarmism, all of those are just different iterations of neo-Marxism. When you like play them out all the way to the end, what you end up with is Marxism. Government control of the means of production, and everybody else. Well, I shouldn't say everybody else. Pretty much, if you're any other color but white, well, then you're treated more fairly than the rest of the population. It's like that line in Animal Farm: some animals are just more equal than others, and that exactly sums up the entire Democrat agenda. But all this indoctrination has been most focused on Generation Z, making it the leftist bombarded generation in American history. Additionally, they are the most connected generation in history. Naturally, they can easily discern the obvious and communicate about the left's dysfunctional discrepancies. Just 26% of 18 to 29-year-olds, tied for the lowest, had trust and confidence in the mass media. After all this, the mystery is not that Generation Z is the most conservative generation in decades. It is that Generation Z isn't more conservative than they already are. Likely, as they age, Generation Z will be joining earlier age cohorts in growing more conservative with the addition of life experience. This, too, won't be very surprising at all. After all, Generation Z's conservatism has come from being on the receiving end of all of the left's mistakes. Wait until it's their children's turn in the barrel. But when you live in a Marxist, so-called utopia that doesn't ever seem to end, when you get a taste of what freedom and American exceptionalism and capitalism feel like, you're going to think that it's amazing. Think about all of the stories that I've published for you on the podcast, the entire series entitled Escape from Communism. I think I'm up to like 4 different episodes now. And the reason why I'm so insistent on bringing those stories to you is so that you can hear, firsthand what it's like to live under socialism and communism. And all of that is terrible. Well, that is the end result of all of the leftist policies that they've been trying to push down Generation Z's throat for ever since they've been in power. For the vast majority of their lives, they've not known conservative leadership, which is what we have right now. And, if you looked at, if you went to any of the Trump rallies, even in 2020, or watched any of them on TV, you can see a large percentage of the people in the crowd are young people. And the reason for it is they've lived their entire lives under the Democrat Party. My friends, we've burned through another busy broadcast week on the program. It's been kind of a whirlwind, but we'll be back next Tuesday, and we'll pick the program up after that. Don't forget about the podcast, that weekend update that's going to be published tomorrow. Haven't exactly decided what that one's going to be yet. I've got a lot of things in the can, so it's going to be eeny, miny, mo. Just pick one and go with it. But there's a lot of stuff coming on Cowboy State Politics next week, and you don't want to miss a minute of it. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the program. That way you can be notified every single time there's a brand new episode of Cowboy State Politics. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio, I'm David Iverson. Have a good weekend, my friends. I'll see you Tuesday.